Vampire Princess Chapter 2 Episode 12 Decisive Battle End. At the beginning of battle, the enemy's monsters let out an attack with unbelievable power and a large-scale magic attack that destroyed the spirit of the Lord's Alliance. However, since the next attack didn't come after that, they began to believe that those attacks can't be used continuously, a kind of power-only gunshot and one-time only firework. Well, if they ask the people themselves, Karaz.H.I gunshot, and a Karaga, firework, they will gladly answer the request by firing it in rapid fire. Still, right now they're busy drinking alcohol while gazing at the battlefield, cheering, resenting, and commenting with a self-satisfied look. They're very busy. Then, as if complimenting them, the monsters that had been standing by in the Aquira Plateau for the past few days started to move while giving a battle cry. Then, looking at that, the Lord's Alliance's commander judged that their enemy had used up its trump card, then moved to conventional melee. With that they feel their spirit come back, and see their chance at victory. The remaining military strength of Amisha Kingdom was over 28,000, while the enemy monsters only had 10,000. In this world, fighting monster 3 vs 1 is possible theory-wise. Thus according that, they have equal war potential. However, different from personal battle, the effective difference in numbers will rise exponentially in a group battle. We can win. Every lord believed in that and first ordered the volunteer soldiers that were divided and placed under their command to the front line, thus preserving their own pieces. Even though their numbers were overwhelming, they weren't better than any amateur. Well, from the lord's perspectives, letting them who supported the third prince, who was a traitor and had a high possibility to rebel, to die together with enemy is a justified action. They held crude weapons and wore crude defensive armaments. Even if they desperately stood their ground against the surging wave of enemy monsters, they were mowed down by the troll warriors, and sent flying by the surging charge of the goblin raiders. Those terrifying free-for-all fights slowly became an agonizing painting of H.E.L.L. that will ruin your eyes. In those chaotic and confusing states, the Lord's Alliance's regular army, which was standing by and waiting for an opportunity, poured down a violent rain of arrows. Additionally, the Magician Corps was also firing numerous ice arrows which bore holes on whoever was in the way, disregarding if it was friend or foe. Moreover, as a finest.H.I+NG move, the cavalry charged and exhausted the enemy army. Then the infantry that came afterwards exterminated the survivors. That kind of scene can be found everywhere in this battlefield. The match is decided. After all, they are just inferior beasts. No matter how much they gather, it won't be a problem. Believing in their victory, complacent smiles floated in the faces of Lord's Allied Forces commanders. However, the enemy's persistence, which was out of their expectations, and their own forces started dwindling together with the passage of time, making them begin to feel agitated and frown. Before long, cold sweat started to flow like water. What is this? Where are they coming from? Moreover, their fighting spirit hasn't declined. As if they know no death. Then, the needle of the scale started to wane away from the favor of the Amisha soldiers. As time said, it slowly inclined toward Imperial Crimson's side, until it was impossible to reverse. Well, all rise. Wide area resurrection was only 8x8 grids when it was a game, so it helps a lot since now it covers a 50m radius, but still, disregarding friend or foe, I stood in the middle of a sea of blood, and used the saint skill all rise. Faint light flowed from the long cane in my hand, secret rose, blue velvet, toward my surroundings. The corpses started to come back to life and looked around. Confused. For it to ignore friend or foe, I don't know if I should say it's convenient or inconvenient, or rather, while looking at that strange bird which was dragged in, also coming back to life and flew while saying stupid stupid, I feel it is really a waste of MP. While muttering to myself, I move and cast all rise, wide area resurrection, again without stopping. Since the resurrection knows neither friend nor foe, allies and enemies were jumbled together and got into a confusing situation. In panic, some even started to fight again. However, hey! Imperial Crimson soldiers who have come back to life, quickly move to the front. The battle has already moved forward since a long time ago, don't be slow. Also, volunteer soldiers from Amisha Kingdom, the Lord's Alliance sacrificed you guys and even attacked you from behind. I won't forgive you. Put up resistance and I won't resurrect you again. However, we won't pursue you, so if you want to run away, go on. That's all. I said what I wanted to say. Since it is only possible to use resurrection within 30 minutes, I can't waste my time here, and left that place. Actually, this is what I heard at latter time. Most of the volunteer soldiers retreated from the battlefield in an unsteady manner, as if their soul was gouged out. Do you think I've become soft, Mikoto, Amari? Suddenly, I remembered the face of a certain masked knight who was also in this battlefield, and asked the two of them. Not in particular. Since from the beginning, it's not something Princess should worry about. From the start, Princess was always saving others depending on mood and meaninglessly committing atrocities. So I am happy that you haven't changed. Well, thank you. I see, so they look at me that way. Well, first, let's work hard. Encouraging myself, I ran around the battlefield like a wind. The result is clear like night and day. Unheard Imperial Crimson soldiers came from every direction, against Amisha soldiers who were not only full of wounds, they also had no reinforcements and were separated from their own lords. Moreover, Imperial Crimson soldiers thoroughly trampled them, not leaving even one soldier behind in their wake. Are you, run, no, retreat, and bless from the surviving army quickly rode their war horses and attempted to leave the battlefield with great haste. Trusted confidants who gathered around him looked at each other's faces and timidly asked for confirmation. However, our allied soldiers are still in the middle of battle, shouldn't we give them retreat signal? Don't be stupid. Giving me time to retreat is the duty of those low CLA.S people. While they stall those monsters, let's leave this place quickly. Hearing him shout with a red face, his close confidants nod to each other, and start to scramble towards their own horses. Isn't doing that kind of thing irresponsible? In that moment, a violent blast descended toward their formation and the surprised horses simultaneously ran away from that place, leaving their owners behind. Like masters, like horses, falling because of the wind pressure of the horses, they were bewildered because they saw a knight with red armor and a red mask walking in the middle of them before they noticed. This man, I feel like I've seen him somewhere. A faint, familiar sensation welled up in their chests, but before they reached the answer, the man faced them and showed a fearless smile while resting his long sword on his shoulder. It's unbecoming for commanders to sacrifice their own allies and run. Our princess, on other hand, is running around the battlefield so none of her allies die here. You, who the H.E.L.L are you? One of the subordinates can't take it anymore and asked. The man prepared his sword and said. Imperial Crimson, one of the princess's subordinates. Marudo. What? In between the commanders whose complexion became pale, the man who called himself Marudo danced forward as if slipping, drew and swung the sword in his hand horizontally. Uranami no S.H.I plus Buki, beach wave splash. With that one attack, those who drew their swords and grasped them, those who tried to draw their swords, those who tried to run, everyone silently turned into corpses. Only one, A.N.O.Blee who fell on their back, was saved. Seriously, to think someone had this kind of luck. Well, I don't know about the me from before, but the current me doesn't have any reason to hold back. So I'll send you to the H.E.L.L your subordinates went to, Earl Villarese. Looking at the conduct of the man who walked toward him, his figure, also his voice that he used to name himself, matched up every sign he got, Earl Villarese gasped. Marudo you said? No, that's wrong, you're Cloud, Ashel, the person with that name is already dead. The one standing in front of you is only his remains, and it will also disappear shortly, leaving only Marudo behind. Saying that, he drew and swung his sword straight ahead. In the corner of the battlefield, all lives came to an end. In the stillness that is unsuitable for a battlefield, Marudo let out a sigh and whispered to no one. Will you feel sad looking at the current me? Well, more than that, perhaps you detest me for being unable to save you. Aren't you the one who knows the answer to that question the most? Do you really think her soul doesn't wish for your happiness? A clear voice answered him. Princess. Carrying secret of rose, blue velvet, in her left shoulder, Hyuki stood there before he noticed. I am sorry, but please save your tears until after we wrap this up. The war here is over, but apparently there's a revolt in the royal capital. The follow-up action is something you must do. Revolt. Hearing not so gentle words, the part of Marudo's face which was not covered with the mask tightened. Hyuki shrugged her shoulder lightly. Yep, somehow the result of this war was announced by the fleeing volunteer soldiers. Then the people who were unhappy towards the end. Bless until now, all revolted at the same time. Well, the seed that someone planted might be sprouting, or something like that. I see. Marudo muttered in low voice, and as if he was a traveler who finally unloaded their heavy burden, he let out a sigh flooded with emotion. That's why I am planning to direct all soldiers to the capital. Don't lag behind. If you're late, the thing you left undone might never get fulfilled, you know. I see. There are still many things I need to. Though she feels the desire to ask what he's thinking about, who he's thinking about, and what would he do, in the end she left that place without asking any of it. Then, looking at that back, Marudo felt somewhat relieved and asked frankly. Princess, when everything has ended, may I borrow your highness's bosom and cry as much as I like? Why? Just cry alone. Hyuki hugged her own chest and retreated right away. Well, men are creatures who want to cry in a girl's bosom in painful times. Then isn't it better if it's not thin like mine, right? How about Sophia? Her chest is huge, there's no objection to it. That young lady ogre? I will be strangled to death. Leaving aside Marudo, who felt dejected after imagining it, Hyuki ran like the wind. My. Scratching his cheek, Marudo headed toward the royal capital. I wonder whether he's waiting for me, he muttered someone's name, but there was no one to hear it.